Dwight D. Eisenhower, one of the ex-presidents, and his extraterrestrial contact with certain individual beings. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The Platonic effect and the impact, he had 3 different transactory conferences with these species. And one of them had an agreement and set up through technologies and then provisions between the Nordics and a certain gray structures. This went back into the reasons why certain extraterrestrials do not go to other leaders, like, for say, Barack Obama.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 11. Blue, how are you?
I'm well today, Mike.
Excellent. Hey, I know we have a big show today. What are some of the things we're going to talk about?
Well, the first receptacle we're going to initiate about is what's going on platonically recently with the core's initial reversal effect. Now, this effect had to do with what the news had stated and something else happening underneath on the reversal itself. The plateau of that happening are the electromagnetic fields on 2 polarity spheres being enacted. And these type of 2 polarity spheres being active can run on a either negative interface or a positive interface, depending on how the signals are being replicated. And some of it has to do with making sure that the maintainment of the reversal effect is on a good neural standard.
All right. Now, I know we have a lot to talk about, but before we dive right in, I do want to remind everybody, please check us out wherever you find podcasts or videos. If we're not at your favorite place, let us know, and we'll make sure we get on board there on that platform. Also, please make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notification bell here so you'll be notified whenever we post new information. Blue, tell me more about this electromagnetic system reversal. What's going on here?
Well, it's a polarized effect that can induct the actual reversal codes of the system itself. Upper magnetizing and the iogenetic effect either can be core analyzed through DNA deprivations or in advanced extraterrestrial core ignition codes. And if the negative frequencies inoculate through this reversal effect, it can maintain higher authority to a negative interval of these DNA deprivations. And that includes neural encapsulating formation codes, because the electromagnetic grid itself runs through the polarity lines of the retrosphere of the planet. And 2, it could cause a manipulation that does not need to be set into place. So the currents as stated. Higher technologies can be degenerated from that and currently are, and remaintained, so the higher platonic effects of those that are on their own awakening process, like the cosmic codes, are being able to regenerate better and upload to their own scepter beings. Like, for instance, you yourself and other replication codes that are able to advance to their upper prelimitory scales, their upper elementary scores. Thus, as the ascension would be, if you think about the prophecy. A reversal effect helps signalizes and uplifts this, but it has to be maintained. And so as is behind the scenes.
So is this going to have any earth-shattering type effects? Are we going to have earthquakes? Are we going to have more a tornadic effect, hurricane storms? Are we going to be able to physically feel and see this?
Well, already others are, and that includes the way they're feeling through the shift process. It's also a way of the process of the electromagnetic fields shifting. Anything and everything could feel that frequency inlet, whether it's generated negative or positive. It's going to generate either more positive, as well as the ignition nodes are set right, or more negative, the downsizing grid keeps maintaining that. But there's a way to interlock in between, so that way when others are feeling this initial node, the receptacles are not negatively inbounding from it. It's going to become a more polarized, positive frequency. Like, for instance, people on their own receptacles currently, since this had happened within the last week or two, have felt more energetic upshift within their beings. Like the planetary realm either felt lighter or heavier, where the coordinates of the replications would be at. Number two, whether they're feeling that, they're either getting a more second generation, but that's because they're signalizing a downside coding effect, or they're replicating something that polarized and happened to them on a higher uplift. It upgraded their shift prelimitory scale.
That's some pretty heavy.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy stuff right there. I mean, go ahead, continue, please.
Yeah, but when it comes to the planetary part, if it does not doctrine in a good neural there, it can affect the shift of the planetary realm, because it could affect the species and the way the way the humans inoculate around the grid. So think about the reversal effect has to be maintained on a proper flow outward. So yes, it could affect the realm, but biogenerically, like what you had said, tornadoes, hurricanes, all the other stuff, you're going into HARP. You want to think of a generic sequencing code that is manipulated. HARP has a lot to do with these types of things. But this is a bit different. Like I said, this runs through electromagnetic energetic neural standard, and its coding has to run smooth.
Is this something that may have happened in the past?
Yes, there have been ultimate timelines that dealt with this replication code, and its current affair is set at length. The generated timelines help reversal effect and informality move forward to the coding nodules that need to be inoculated through that. And while that is inoculated, it is centered as a dynamo theory. Like a celestial body or planetary grid, such as Earth or a star it generates a magnetic field and electromagnetic frequency. There have been numerous timelines that this electromagnetic frequency has had a connection and a rotating spherical wave that is generated and maintained through certain intervals, and electrically causing the current itself to move at a different directive. Astronomical time scales. There have been many time scales that have motivated this. It polarizes the fields and frequencies that are for another generation in effect.
Now, I think you touched on this before, but I just want to be clear. I talked about us physically feeling a presence. Is this something that an individual is going to physically feel from their body? Like if they're feeling more fatigued, or like you had mentioned, energetic before, does it go both ways? Can it be energetic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have already stated that. Yes, it can affect both wavelengths.
Wow. So physically, if I'm feeling the past week or so, if I'm feeling a lot better, a lot more energy, or the reverse, if I'm feeling, weighed down, if I'm feeling fatigued, there is something to that. Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy stuff. Imagine what we talked in the past about the Indians and so forth. Imagine what they had felt when these things were going on. They had no clue about these things. That's crazy stuff. Wow. What's going on with the that Devil's Monument, the Devil's Tower National Monument?
From the ancient Lakota tribes, the indigenous people, it set status to USA sector long time ago, as was generated on their own wavelength. The so-called star god or star initial female being came down from the heavens, pregnant. She was dead, though, upon interface. One of the tribes had found her and found a baby just born from her womb. This baby grew up much faster and quicker than ungenerated beings. Like if you're thinking you're 1 year old, this being will be 4 to 5 years old. Its growth will be doubled. It has generated knowledge much higher than most. This little boy, if you will, when he was a kid, had saved these other units from these bears that were going to attack them. That's why these claw marks are still there. And he used these abilities to be able to levitate and manipulate things into perspective. Psionic effect, replications, this being never left Earth. Now generate that into a reality check for the DNA perceptions of humankind, being able to have these different abilities. And it is very possible because of a platonic effect that will be placed upon the page. One of the enhancements is being able to breathe less. One of the enhancements is being able to maintain a higher ethical status of the base cold, or other types of replications, eye colors, changing in alternations, higher modulation codes, and being able to feel less pain. All of that stuff come from hyper extraterrestrial DNA. And a lot of that stuff had to do with the replicating of the DNA of these humanoids that have emulated between them and lower societies here. Thinking about that, we are all coordinated, part alien. This is what the Kalora tribes and what the other indigenous people have known. They are all part of that scepter. Humans need to understand their receptacles run along that database stream too. Higher beings have been manualized among societies for many generations, and it goes into the effect of timelines and jump skipping onto other dimensions, if you will. Hence of the paths of astronauts and going and motivating between those.
So is this not only mental, this is mental and physical capabilities that this star child had then?
Yes, and it taught them the life forces of good, and be able to taught others the constellations and what goes on in the many realms, and it was able to teach others these different doctrines and abilities too. And if you really think about it, the current platforms of the tribes, which aren't around much anymore, but still keep, to their heritage, when you go and you run into them, and they have this music that they're playing, or they're getting into that, it will start getting windy around the area. Think about some of the Lakota music. The sun will come out, or something will replicate. That fortifying speed is still there through the telepathic communications between them and the higher individuals. These star beings are very close to what Source would have wanted to obtain for a good planetary realms. They knew the doctrines of right. They're able to open up these abilities when you get into this type of frequency.
So we have this DNA in us as well now. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yes, humans always have, but it's been replicated throughout the generations through multi-sequencing codes.
As far as physical functions, are we talking like Superman type feats? You mentioned the ability not to feel pain, all these things. Is it jumping higher, running faster, lifting more? Are those type of skills what we're talking about as well?
Yes, but they're very rare. They're very rare, and across the planet, throughout the timelines, they have been noted. Not many people, not many humans have them. It skips many generations, then they lose the DNA over time. But that replication of that type of DNA can come back. It is a loss of a certain strand or molecule that has been re-emoted from its currency or platform.
Is it possible we all have these abilities in our DNA? We're just missing part to activate it. For instance, you've heard stories of people becoming superhuman, like right after a car accident, being able to physically lift a car off somebody because they say because of adrenaline or so forth. But I've heard of superhuman feats, which people have no idea how it happened or where they got that ability from. Could that be possibly the same source as well?
Yes, But like I said, it's a rarity. You're thinking about Guinness Book of World Records. Souls said they're very rare specified. Some of them even have paranormal interlocking ways. Like they're able to levitate or levitate objects. That's been seen through world records. That's been seen through oddities. It's not impossible. It's just a generic code that has been lost through its humanization process. And like the gateway process, that itself is a generation of being able to platonically open up your neural standards to help maybe elevate and DNA enhance the genetics back into place again through a neural standard. Certainly unlocking some of the platforms that need to be generally unlocked.
Now, the Lakota tribe, is this part of their folklore? Is this part of, this is, this story, if your ancestors are from Lakota, this is a story that's still passed down today. This is a story of significance.
Yes, it's one of the main heritage codes. They, amongst the other tribes, like Cree, the ones I have talked about before, they respect the ways of life. And they respect the doctrine that they were taught from individuals that have helped them keep this. Not all of them may know about the ET part. More of the secret, keep it hush hush tribes do. Like this one that went on network in 2021 and exposed about the inventory skills of the last network show I had talked about, of the star beings, how their connections went into that.
The name,
they didn't say it all the time. It didn't come out all the time.
The name is interesting, though, that we call it the Devil's Tower National Monument. I trust that's not what the Lakota calls it.
Right. Mato Tapila, or Lodge of the Bears, is the actual indigenous real name of the Devil's Tower that the Lakotas had announced about it. This meaning is more doctrine for the heritage and the fine lines of what they motivated for. The Devil's Tower is just something on a motivation and a regular interval of what humans perceive.
That's a very European or very white man name, I think, Devil's Tower. I wonder how it got its name.
That's just the way they stated. That is just the way that they stated it, and that is not the way the doctrines of the tribes would have wanted it. They would have wanted it kept to the way that it was currently placed beforehand.
Right. Okay. And how does this affect us now? Is this just part of our history? Is there any impending actions that are happening because of this, or is this just part of how we became human?
It is something that needs to be re-replicated back for others to understand that you cannot doctrine higher technologies in the ways of a law upon a platform unless you learn the life forces of the planet itself and the doctrine of what its originality came through. Humans need to learn to respect the generated life of this planet, the lower receptacles, and the realm itself. If they are even going to want to become as advanced as they even think they are.
Now, I know this has happened before, and I know there's many stories that we don't know about, but we've been visited before, what the indigenous people or the American Indians may have called star people. Well, we've been visited by people from other areas, other galaxies, other timelines. And as a matter of fact, something happened in the Eisenhower administration. Can you tell me more about that?
Dwight D. Eisenhower, one of the ex-presidents, and his extraterrestrial contact with certain individual beings. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The platonic effect and the impact, he had 3 different transactory conferences with these species. And one of them had an agreement and set up through technologies and then provisions between the Nordics and a certain gray structures. This went back into the reasons why certain extraterrestrials do not go to other leaders, like, for say, Barack Obama. or other sentences. They want to go and simulate to someone who has the replication disorder intact. No. So at that time, there was a protocol that had to be inoculated. This was concerning the actuating device of what's currently going on right now, and the timelines that need to be re-replicated and maintained for mankind, systematically authorizing and advancing the knowledge that needed to be obtained for its type of protocol.
So basically, Eisenhower cut a deal with extraterrestrials.
Yes.
How did this come about? I mean, we've seen and heard of unidentified flying objects over the White House during those periods of time. And, you know, I think a lot of people just blew it off like it was made up, it was fake, or what have you. How did this come about? Did they come to us? Did we accidentally stumble upon them? Is there any indication as how this started?
Yes, his meeting with these cosmic life forms that would take place with officials and on vacation in Palm Springs, California. And if you think about one of the receptacles, main receptacles there, deals with the nativities of the secret Space Force programs. So there was a doctrine initial meeting at that time in around 1954 in February, where he was meeting with these Nordics, supposedly, like I stated, but inertially had ended up making contact with a certain type of gray infrastructure, which were mainly the reticuli species and some of the small grays. The standard was signed and agreed to be supportive and reformative between both races and articulate the emulation nodes that need to be maintained here. There are authorizations here that not need to be on that scale. Those type of authorizations are negative types of beings. So there had to be a secret space program that had to inoculate something against this receptacle, because most humans would be unaware of what's really going on. It had taken that many years to get things set into place, and that had to do with Area 51. Federation, the Federation itself, it is just a name. It's a name, it's a platonic name. The reality of it is the Space Force itself. The reality of it is the departments of the ET Space Force, and the reality of it is this was something added.
I do find the timing quite curious. You had mentioned Area 51, and that is a few years after the Roswell incident in 1947. Yes. Then around that same timeline, in that same era, we had the bombs that were dropped on Japan. I mean, is that maybe something that got the attention of the extraterrestrials? Like, wow, they have this powerful weapon now. Could that have escalated things?
Maybe it could have gotten a signalized event to the good replication codes to maybe take action at that time, because the sign-off event for nuclearized weapons did not need to be added to this type of interplanetary scale. Much reducing, which would have been much worse for this planet at the time. And setting into effect, the Air Force bases itself and the extraterrestrial movement between Eisenhower and the base in New Mexico with these beings as well, to a reanimation of what needs to be doctrined here.
You know, and it's quite curious because you had mentioned technologies, and we had mentioned this in the past. This seems to be the jump off point or the starting point, because shortly after this, we were in a better position with our rockets. We were in a better position with other technologies, simple as they be, whether it be going from black and white to color television, communication. Then you fast forward into the 70s and the 80s and the development of the internet through the military and so forth. I find it curious that it seems like you could almost take it back to that 1954 date and look at all the advances we've made as a civilization with everything. I mean, this is definitely where that had to happen. This is definitely the jump off point. I'm convinced. No?
Yeah, and absolutely. And you're thinking about governments and world leaders already having regular contact with extraterrestrials for many decades around the world. So speaking on that effect, they hide that inventory scale behind the scenes. You got to think about how much of the technologies are being proposed, and much at a higher wavelength and time scale than it should have been generated for mankind. Why is that?
It's very curious, very, very curious stuff there. You had mentioned that they've been shied away from evil leaders. You had mentioned Barack Obama before. Is this something that we still see today? I think of the antithesis of Barack Obama would be 45, would be Donald Trump. Are we suggesting then that being they didn't have communication with Barack Obama, that they did have communication with Donald Trump?
Yes, and they still do. It's part of the whole reason the Space Force itself. Now, the doctrine effect is higher beings that have the intelligence to maintain a better calibrated lifespan are not going to go to lower negative module forms that don't want that. They're going to want to calibrate what's right with the proper leaders upon the planetary realm.
Well, that leads me to my next part then. I put Barack Obama in the same category as Joe Biden. So you're telling me that they're still in communication with 45 today, and Joe Biden being lumped in with Barack Obama, fair or not, that's telling me we're being led by the wrong leader. We're being led by the wrong team right now. The evil beings, the people who are not. It's blowing my mind right now. I'm convinced now more than ever that we're being led by the enemy.
Yes, absolutely. It's because of the whole doctrine effect that is going on behind the scenes of manipulating, rejuvenating to their own processing skills, and hyper-animating what does need to process. That includes the negative effects of clones and Andronicon itself, which was replicated just recently on my platform on Facebook. That is reality check of the underground scenarios of what's going on. Child trafficking goes way deeper than that. You're talking about generating blood sequencing codes on things and putting them into a robotic interface. Look more closely at Biden, everyone. I'm serious. Think about a clone. Think about something that's a puppet. He doesn't generate right, regardless of the astral fit. And if you notice in between the scenes, you're watching TV, you're watching news, either good or bad, he's going to start acting and doing things like someone is controlling him. This is the reality of what's going on. It is not, he's got something neurally wrong with him. It's not that, because if you look at other generated platforms, he would never become president. And he would never have the smarts of the other outlying things that he is doing positively. So something is going on. Pay attention.
Well, we are running close to the end here, and I don't want to just blow by the things that you had spoken about child trafficking and adrenochrome and all sorts of things. I do want to make sure we will post those things on our Facebook page. So I don't want to just blow by that, and we'll talk more about that in our next show. I do want to ask you though, with your position with the Space Force and the Federation, are there any further updates you can give us from that perspective?
Well, analyzing actual fit of effect is certain leaders here in this country need to start standing down to their innovation calling codes that are causing others to repercuss on other countries in a negative effect. Number one. So humans by announcing in that way find that to stand down to that fortifying speed, because that's not going to cause things to happen better. We want a better inlaid effect. We want a Q age. Then we got to remove the doctrines of the negative attribute, which will cause nuclear events. We don't want that. Avert from that and retrofit into the higher ingrading points of maintaining between the better leaders, either again or an add-on effect. The intellect has to come back into this planet again.
And how about a final word for us today? Do you have a final word?
Yes. To those, maintain your authority for what your higher speeds are. Awaken into your proper authorization process. Meditate when you're down low in your codes, and find a way to find that proper peace within yourselves. Do not let the doctrine of the evil fortifying speeds of this realm pull you down, and know your willpower of maintaining a higher retrospect within your very well fortified soul.
Awesome. Wonderful stuff. I want to make sure that I thank everybody for tuning in. It's with people tuning in and with people responding. That's what keeps us going here. So by all means, if you have any questions, drop us a note on the Facebook page, on the Twitter page, or however you're receiving this podcast or video. Blue, thank you again. Episode 11. Very nice stuff.
Thanks.
And again, anything we touched on or blew by today, I didn't mean to. We'll update those things in our upcoming show and on the socials as well. Thank you again, Blue.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Have a good day.